Hi guys, we got a couple of questions recently and I'd like to tackle them. The first question was, can you read T cards with any pre-made tarot spread? And the answer is absolutely yes. And I think this goes for most oracle systems. I'm not going to say all, but I think for the most part, whether it's tarot, you can do it with Lenormand, you can do it with oracle cards of various types. I'm trying to think of systems that you wouldn't want to use in a spread. There are, of course, oracle systems and systems that work better in their quote-unquote natural habitat that is kind of meant for them, but runes, for instance, can be taken and used in tarot spreads. A lot of things that we think of being used in their conventional forms can be modernized, let's put it that way. In regards to tea specifically, the question was, okay, now if you're going to use a tarot spread or any other spread that you create, Karin has these, the questions deck, which are pre-made. You can use them as one at a time, or make your own spreads, pre-made placement cards, which are really awesome cue cards, especially if you can't think of a question. You can shuffle them or you can look through them to find inspiration. So again, this is a perfect example of, pretend I have a huge spread here. This is one of the areas. I'm going to use a charm just to keep it simple. So I'm just going to use one. So can you use just one symbol or should you use multiple? That was the second question. And I use one symbol to keep it simple. There are times when I may want to double up on my symbols. Sometimes it's for clarity. Sometimes it just feels right. If that's the case, if I'm using charms, I may scatter a few. The same with the cards, I may use a few. Another way to do it, and one of my favorite ways to do it, is to use the charms and the cards together, because the charms is its own complete deck. Of the same symbols as the cards, and then you are allowing all the symbols are freed up to speak, and you don't have, like, if it really wants to hammer the message in, it can do that, especially if you have multiple cards or multiple placements going on, and you may want to really need to talk about symbols that need to communication, for instance, needs to go in a few different places or needs to be clarified. So I highly recommend either using charms with a deck to clarify with tea, or using a similar deck with the same symbols, just a whole separate deck. And the way we would do that, for instance, with this here, is using the 50 Shades on the 50 Shades charm mat, which I've just laid it flat so that we can have more space for cards. I could use the 50 Shades. I could pull more from the 50 Shades for clarification, since this is just one area. But if this is, for instance, an 11 card spread, I'd want to open up those cards to speak, have all the cards open and available to double up and hit me over the head. This time, pretend that that's the case. I'm gonna grab the Alice cards, and then boom, boom. So now we have two cards to work with. We have more information, we have clarifiers. We also, because it's tea and it's fluid, it's moving, it's directional, we're going to pay attention to the directions. I think the idea of needing two cards for a spread kind of came up with, from the idea of Lenormand cards. And we don't, and that's fine with Lenormand. I think even Lenormand, when using as a tarot spread, because it's unconventional, will work with one card. But either way, you've got your clarifier card here. And now I can't remember if I mentioned this in another video, because this is the first video. So if I'm overlapping what I'm saying, just please forgive me. It's early in the morning and I haven't had my tea yet. But in any case, it's really interesting this came up, because the monkey is very relevant to anxiety, because he's a multitasker. That's the first key word that comes to mind when I think of anxiety and this symbol. When I'm writing down a list of when you have your keywords for this symbol and then your stories for this symbol, then you have to relate which one of those keywords or stories relate back to anxiety, and that's where you find your answer. And if you're a beginner, you can literally start with your list and then comparing your list. For me, this happens pretty quick at this point. When I pulled this card, I chuckled because this again is a card about anxiety. In its positivity, it's about creativity and imagination, but it's also things that are larger than life. It's making mountains out of molehills. Here, directionally speaking, the monkey is looking at the dragon, and he's looking at the side of the dragon here with the light spot. So if this were to have an arrow on it, it would be looking this way. So this would be the positive side of the dragon, you could say, or the creative and imaginative side, rather than the fear side. So here it's almost like he's biting off more than he can chew. Because while these are both anxious cards and speaking about anxiety, this one by itself is speaking about making mountains out of molehills, which is how it related back to anxiety, or things that aren't actually happening. This one is trying to multitask and do everything. He's probably running around too quick. So together, I would say he's bitten off more than he can chew. He has great grand ideas, but it's too much. Now, if you added this drum in, we looked at the drum by itself, if I recall correctly, but if we added this drum in, then that would just be an extra chuckle for me, because to me here, it would talk about like the drum beat. You have to stay on beat. You have to stay on a schedule, on target, which is probably not happening here. And with the drum, with T being fluid, being above the monkey and literally at his head, it makes me think that like he's thinking in his head constantly. And he's always looking for that next step, which goes back to that overwhelm and bit off more than he can chew. The monkey's natural skill, he is an organ grinder, so we could almost put this in his hand like this. So it's like, I should be good at this. Why am I not good at this? So something's awry here in this picture. Now, another way to layer tea, now I really believe in layering systems. You can layer tea with tarot, you can layer tea with oracle cards, you can layer charms over books, which is a great way to read. You can layer cards over cards. I believe in layering, like I said, all sorts of systems. To keep it simple, we're going to just look at layering tea. We looked at layering the cards and the charms here. Another way to layer them is the GT mat. You can do this with 2 decks of identical symbol cards, or you can use one of Karin's wonderful GT mats. The GT mats allow you to flip the cards and see them, and then also see the houses that are underneath them, which kind of reminds me of the Lenormand GT. I always looked for a GT from Lenormand that had the numbers as well as the houses names where I could see them under the cards, because with my dyslexia and liking to chain, it's very important, or it's easier for me to see the count and to see the names. With Lenormand, I found it very easy to memorize the 36 symbols in regards to all their numbers. With T, it's changed a few times in her decks, but now she's got it more standardized with the 50, but even so, 50 is a lot to keep track of. And I'm getting older. So, and even so, again, with my dyslexia, it just makes it a lot easier. And this is always great for beginners as well. So I love these mats because of it. This is the way I love them. Hopefully you do too. But this way, I mean, it's not quite as compact, but again, you get to see everything. I find that I have less screw-ups or mix-ups when chaining because I can see everything. So to get at this mat, you can do an entire GT, which is a huge read, but a great read for a yearly or a monthly or even an 18-month prediction. It's really how you set the time frame. It can also do small readings. So here I've chosen a love reading. There's a few different ways you could do this. If you choose whether or not you're going to do 3 cards, 5 cards, a 9 box. I chose here just a simple 3 card. And you would read these 3 cards here together, and then you'd also read them with their houses. So these here would be the clarifiers in this regard, since we chose the heart house as the significator. If we were using this differently, we could lay out all the cards. I would do this face up and then find the heart, and then we could, read it from there. So for instance, let's just keep this simple so I don't have to lay out all the cards. Let's say we're asking a money question. You're laying out so you shuffle the cards, you lay out all the cards until you see the money. And it lands on sword. And then you're going to read the cards around it. You're going to read the 3 cards around it. You're going to read the 9 box around it. You're going to read, you're going to knight the cards. You're going to do all those things. And then you're also going to look at the houses that they go in. So money, right here, money with sword. I'd say, you need to look at what kind of action needs to be taken or what's going on, because something here is going on, whether it's you need to be taking control or money is being cut. And what's going on here around you is going to tell you more about this. Ship over here and ship over there is interesting. These are commerce cards. They talk about coming and going. This here being house, this looks like a house business perhaps. So depending on what the question is, if this was a working at home venture, I would say, you need to get out there and network more with teacups, because this is a delicate situation. With sword, I would say it's a delicate situation, but it's also something where teacups, it's where you get together, meet up with people and network. You literally need to network, get yourself out there in order to create business. Find out and really focus on the foundations of your business and look at what's going on and make sure that there's nothing that you're missing. Take control of these foundations. Now, I'm not going to do a 9 box or a bigger read here, but it's just a way to show you how you can layer, and you don't have to use the entire mat. You can just focus on this one little area of where your question is. If you're laying out all the cards, it does give you the option to skip around and look at 4 or more areas of your life. So I hope that helps. And a lot of these, like I said, a lot of these techniques and ideas can be used in various systems. Not just tea. I love using tarot spreads and all sorts of oracle systems. I love using tea with other oracle systems. It's not something that we post to tea group, just to keep it simple. But it really is beautiful. And you've seen Karin read charms on books. Some of my greatest reads have been with charms on books, landing on the words. It's just a beautiful way to read. I'm still a huge fan of the cups because it goes back to the fluidity and the moving stories. It kind of looks like a picture reel to me. But those are just different ways of piecing it all together. And yeah, so if you have any questions, leave me a comment below and let's work it out.